Okie-doke, here we go. Good morning, or well, I guess it'd be good afternoon. Today is Friday, August 30th, and it is 12:15. In the afternoon. Let's see. I wanted to start recording earlier today, but it just wasn't possible. Pretty much because, I got to take care of my hygiene, and being in the van, I don't really have access. I don't have access to a shower or a running sink with hot water. So when it comes time when I have to shave my neck and take care of my cleanliness, I have to use a jet boil to heat up a container of water, make it boiling hot, and then I use like a rag, to wash my face. Soap with hot water and a rag to wash my face and clean myself, and then shaving cream, and then dip my razor blade into the container and have to shave and stuff. And I'm doing all this inside the van. It takes a lot longer. It's a much longer process. Taking care of my stubble and all that stuff in the van, than as compared to like having a bathroom. But it's okay. It's just I usually shave about 2 days per week, and whichever day that I'm doing that, it usually takes me a while. And anything that I want to accomplish during the day, I usually have a later start. Just a little bit of side information in case you care, or in case you want to know. It's definitely a different experience living in a van full time and having nowhere to go. I feel like I can't return home. It's just I can't return back to where I've grown up, back to my family that I've known for my entire life. Supposedly, supposedly now I just can't just go home anymore. Those relationships appear to be severed. I haven't heard from my mom since the last time I texted her. Her and I were texting each other. Our last communication was like August 5th, I believe, August 5th or August 4th. And today's August 30th, right? So it's been almost a full month since I've heard from her. And in that time span of no contact with my family, I have no idea what's taking place back in Central Oregon. I have no idea what's taking place in my mom and dad's house or my sister's house, or what kind of conversations are taking place between my mom and dad and my sister. I have no clue as far as their psychological state and their emotional state during all of this. Because if everything I've said is true, I'm sure my dad's probably freaking out and terrified that he's gonna get caught, and he's probably off the rails right now. This is going with the assumption that he's still walking free. I mean, considering everything I have shared in the past few weeks, I have no idea if law enforcement has already interacted with them in some way. I have no idea if my family has been arrested and right now they are currently locked up, or if they're all still walking free, and each time I share a video, they're watching my videos to see what I'm going to talk about. And for each video that they watch, it's causing them to respond in different ways. I have no idea what kind of involvement they have had during this whole process. As far as my position, I have no idea what they've been aware of and have participated in, since I'm just gonna pick a specific time frame. Just say since I left Costco, all the way from 2013 up until now. I don't know where they have been through this whole thing. I don't know if they've been involved in stuff knowing about me and hiding the truth from me since birth, or for my entire life, which is why my life has been as it is. I don't have the answers for this, but what I'm saying is it's been almost a full month since I've heard from them, and I don't know what they're doing in Central Oregon. I don't know what's happened. I haven't received a single text message from anybody in my contacts, as far as people that I have their names and numbers stored in my phone, business contacts, family, just all my contacts. I have not received a single text message since I left in my van. Strange, other than talking to my mom, and even her, it's been almost a month. So, I have no clue. And then that last message I got on YouTube that I mentioned, it would be 2 episodes back, about whoever it was that wrote that, establishing that my family considers me dead. So that's establishing, like, where they, whoever that person was, I don't know, they're pretty much establishing my family's position as far as my mom, dad, and my sister, and probably all my extended family, where they stand. They view me, they're scared of me, because if they have been involved in some really messed up stuff, including lying to my face and a whole long list of shit. If it's all true and they've been involved in all that, then they're probably terrified, probably very paranoid to even just go out in public, and even more paranoid if any of them happen to notice airplanes or helicopters that seem to be following them around town whenever they do go out in public or do go run errands in town, and they're noticing the aircraft now. That's each segment that I've been sharing. I am communicating with law enforcement, and that doesn't just mean the Jackson Hole area. No, this is law enforcement across the entire United States, including Central Oregon, which is my hometown area. I'm communicating with Central Oregon law enforcement as much as I'm communicating with Jackson Hole law enforcement, just as much as all law enforcement across the board. Just letting you guys know about my current situation. And that's the best I can do, is sit down and speak in front of a camera to let you know what I'm going through while I'm sharing these segments, while I'm sharing this story. And as I've said, as we progress deeper and deeper into the story, those who are part of, the bad guys, those who are part of that, however long they remain walking free, in the context that they have the ability to get on YouTube and watch my YouTube videos, so long as they have that freedom and they're hearing everything that I'm sharing, they are going to respond in different ways. They're going to they're going to try and stop me, try and stop me somehow, try and capture me, try and murder me, whatever that entails. But at the same time, they might try to create havoc and mayhem elsewhere around the country to create diversions, in a sense, to try to get everybody looking in different directions while they try to maneuver towards their main goal. Their main goal is, they have a primary goal, but they're going to create as much distractions around it as they can, to keep the good guys all occupied with fighting fires, so to speak, and dealing with all these different crises, where innocent people's lives are in jeopardy. You know, those are things that have to be addressed. You know, they got in the context of the bad guys, they have all their minions and their foot soldiers who are spread out around the country, hiding in plain sight. And all it takes is for any given individual amongst that group to just receive a phone call or a text message from one of their superiors, you know, because there's a chain of command, and they're given an assignment or a mission, and sometimes it might even include a suicide mission. They might just go create chaos somewhere, even if it means that person loses their life. You know, the bad guy is willing to sacrifice his life for the greater cause of their organization. But then again, their foot soldiers might not know that they're about to get sacrificed by their leaders. They're just being given an assignment, but they're not being told other things. You know, I'm speaking in the perspective of one of the bad guys, like one of the foot soldiers, you know, someone that's a lower rank that goes and does all the dirty work. They might receive an assignment and told to go somewhere and do something, but they're not given all the details, and so they take the assignment because they have to, so more or less, and then once they get out there, they don't know they're walking into a trap, and then they all just get murdered. You know, they'll just get shot by the good guys or taken into custody, whatever that means. You know, they're taken care of. And then when those soldiers, the bad guy soldiers, disappear, and their leaders, you know, the ones who gave that assignment, when they find out about that, all of a sudden there's no more contact from those who they had sent out on assignment. All of a sudden they don't hear back from them, so they're just going to assume they got dealt with. So whatever other foot soldiers they have, now they're going to try and send them, and they're not, whoever the leaders are, whoever's giving the orders, probably not going to tell these guys what happened to those guys, because if these guys were told the truth about what happened to the last group that got sent on the same assignment, that they all just disappeared, these guys probably would not go do it. They'd be like, fuck that, you don't even know what happened to them, you want to send us out there and we're going to get captured or taken out too? Like, you know, so these are things that are at play, not just around me. You know, any bad guys that have been trying to get to me, and they've all been getting scooped up, and then whoever has been giving those assignments, they no longer have contact with them. You know, they just kind of go off the radar, in the sense of there's no more communication from the bad guy foot soldiers to the ones that are giving the orders. The longer this is going, it's going to be causing those who are given the orders, it's going to cause them to start panicking, especially if it's, you know, the results of all these attempts to either get to me or try to get to other good guys that are important on the chessboard. Every time that they're failing to accomplish their missions, and then that news goes up the chain of command, and it eventually gets to the top, you know, like Dan or anybody within like that top realm of that pyramid. When they find out about all their bad guys just disappearing and getting killed or getting taken into custody wherever they're at across the board, that's going to cause them to start panicking, and they're going to become very desperate. B, they're going to be more fearful. You know, they're panicking. They don't know what to do. And as a product of being in fear, they're going to make more mistakes. They're going to take greater risks. But these risks are not going to be calculated anymore. They're going to just be greater risks. So once those plans blunder and fall apart, it's just something that escalates within their own thing, where it all just starts unraveling, because the people who are looking up to those, you know, whoever their leaders are, everyone who's looking up to their leaders, they're no longer going to be confident with these decisions that they're making. And then when they're no longer confident, and then the leaders start giving them more orders, more drastic actions, telling them to do more riskier things, even they're going to start rebelling against themselves. If you can understand what I'm saying, they'll start fighting amongst each other, refusing to take orders, and then the leaders, they will make examples of some of the people that refuse to take orders to try to make everybody else in fear, to get them in line to go do what they're being told. And if they might get some that will go do it, but others, they might just start fighting back, and then they might just start killing each other because they're too scared. The lower rank guys are too scared to go do the dirty work, do the jobs that these higher rank guys are too scared to go do themselves. The lower rank guys are going to see that the higher rank guys are not as powerful as they may have appeared in the past, and that they're losing control. And so the lower rank guys might be like, well, fuck that. Let's just take them out and see if we can take control of it, take control of the ship that they're on or whatever. I mean, everything's going to fall apart within their own thing. So long as the good guys just continue, intervening and intercepting the bad guys as they're trying to carry out their missions or assignments, whatever they're trying to do. If they're all getting caught as they're doing it, that's the fallout. That's what, if you're law enforcement, military, keep that up. Keep doing what you're doing, because after a period of time, for all of them that you're capturing or just taking out, you're going to be causing all of that from within their thing. That's the same type of shit they've tried to do to us, to the good people. And we've, not only have they been exposed, but we've also learned a lot. We've learned a lot of lessons. We've learned from our own mistakes. We've learned from our own experiences. We've learned from other people's experiences based off things that they've shared. Just overall, it's not just one person sharing all this information. A lot of you have become aware of this as you've been going. But when we start talking about it, that kind of validates all of our own experiences. Like, yeah, I've experienced it, and then somebody else watching this video, they've experienced it too, and they're like, yeah, I agree. And so as we all become empowered, we know what we got to do, and it's just that so long as they can't touch their primary targets or their secondary targets or the families of their targets, if you're law enforcement or military, you got to educate your family, your children, and if you're husband, wife, whatever gender you are, if you're a male or female and you're married, so you got to educate your spouse, whatever age your children are, educate them to whatever capacity that they can understand, and teach your children how to defend themselves. If you are a gun advocate, teach your children how to use a weapon. Because if it ever comes down to it, and we come down to an all-out war, like full-on warfare, a civil war or World War III or something, it's going to be like good versus evil. But your children, can't underestimate your children. If you empower your children and you teach them how to defend themselves and how to defend their family, and you teach them military tactics and how to communicate and how to be stealthy and smart and all of that, you teach them all of the things that you would learn as if you're going to boot camp in the military or the police academy. Teach them as much strategy and tactics as you can, because your children will remember, and they will not only will they remember, they will look up to you as a protector and a teacher and someone that they can go to whenever they encounter things that they might not necessarily know how to deal with. And that's how you build a very strong family unit. And then when you have a strong family unit, anybody that that is not close like you are with your family, people are going to notice that. And they might, they're going to want to know how you're going about accomplishing what you are. And that's how you can build community. Get everybody on the same team. As far as it's like everybody, you have your own family, but you consider your friends as your family. You consider your neighbors as your family. I mean, you don't have to necessarily like them. You don't have to have, you might have personalities that are conflicting with one another, but you understand the big picture and you're willing to fight and defend your neighbors whatever skin color they are, whatever ethnicity they are. It doesn't, it's whatever language they speak, whatever ethnicity, whatever skin color, it doesn't matter. As long as we all understand the meaning of life and why we're here, and that we're brothers and sisters of different mothers, yeah. But we all come from the same place. We're all spirits having a human flesh experience, and then once we each pass on, in this current reality, once we each pass on, then our spirit leaves our flesh, and then if you've passed your test, you can go home, back to where we came from, where each of us has come from before we came here. If we're empowering one another with knowledge, all the way down from the family unit to our neighbors and our friends and our whatever town or community we grow up in, whoever you're interacting with, everybody's on the same page, and everybody's willing to protect one another should there ever be danger or harm, anybody's in harm's way. Everybody's willing to step up and defend each other like we're all one giant family. And then anybody, as far as bad guys, anybody that even thinks about fucking with any single individual within this community, this big giant family unit, they're going to have to deal with everybody. So I imagine you understand what I'm saying. Unity, coming together, is so important right now in 2024. Like, whatever, in the sense of wherever you're at in the world, if you can just think about people you don't like, that you don't like, but they haven't necessarily done anything bad to you, or you're surrounded by people of a different skin color or a different belief or something, like it's important to put aside our petty differences and just see the big picture of what's going on, and focusing on the source of our problems. And once we deal with the source of our problems, this reality is the bad guys are real, and they're trying to steal this entire world, which means there's bad guys all over the place. And it means that everybody who's not amongst them, we have to work together. And if we don't work together, and we're all isolated on our own, that's how they get you. That's how they get you with any type of trap or snare that they can create. And if we stick together and work together, and each individual has their own strengths and weaknesses, and by working together, we have a very large pool of people who have all different types of strengths and abilities. And everybody who has their weaknesses, things that they're not necessarily able to improve on for whatever circumstances, you have other people that your weaknesses are somebody else's strengths. So if the larger group you have, all of our abilities and weaknesses, everything complements each other. It's very easy and straightforward. You have people that their primary interest is, I'm just picking things out of the hat. Some people love, say if you have a giant family unit and everybody has different interests. You have some people that want to be warriors and soldiers, to be the protectors of this family unit. You have other people who don't want that at all, but they respect all of those who are the warriors and the soldiers and the protectors. But from within, you got people that love to grow food. They like to be around plants, and they like to grow all types of food. And then you probably get a whole bunch of people where you can all grow clean food that can sustain everybody at the same time, where you just have a surplus of good, clean food amongst the community. And those who are out there defending and protecting, they don't have to worry about that, because what's being grown from within, it all gets shared. And you got people that are very good, like with building and mechanics. Like, you got everybody that has their own interests. We all help each other. I mean, what I'm talking about isn't new. That's what we have out in society now. But right now, because everybody's trust has been severed. Nobody trusts each other. Everybody has different beliefs, and everybody just is more or less, people don't trust each other. And the only people that they trust are just like, they usually have like a close circle of friends and family, and they all keep to themselves, and they're just living their own lives. So everybody's just living their own lives, and we don't really have community anymore. Just as a whole, we don't really have close community, or even a large community, as far as across the country, where the East Coast and the West Coast and the South and the North are all on the same page, where we're working together to make life good for everybody. Right now, I feel like that's not even a thing. Everybody is very divided. But the overall goal is just get everybody slow down on what we're doing, and whatever anybody's doing. Just everybody's got to slow down and look. Just start looking around at the big picture. What direction is society heading? And let's start talking about real things that are actually worth talking about, and that is the source of our problems. Anything less than the source of our problems, it's essentially like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs stitches, or a wound that needs surgery. A Band-Aid is not going to solve the problem. Like, you have to go to the source of the problem and fix that, otherwise you're eventually just going to bleed out. If you understand the analogy that I'm saying. All these big issues around the United States, it's not that they're not, things that really do need resolved, and people want to allocate a lot of time and energy and resources towards fixing those things as like something that's a priority. But from my position, I'm saying you guys are wasting your fucking time. Whatever you are trying to fix and accomplish, you're wasting your time until you go to the source of our problems. Because no matter what you're trying to accomplish, whether you finish a project and think that you're completed, or you address a problem and you think you have it solved, there are people out there, the source of our problem, who are creating these things to begin with. And as soon as you turn your back or walk away, they're going to kick your feet out from under you, or knock over your project and create more issues for you. So at some point, you're like a dog that's chasing your tail. You're just going in circles, chasing all of these issues that are never going to be fixed. Because every time you fix one, there's another one, and then another one. And it's all being created by somebody over here that thinks it's funny, that thinks it's hilarious to watch everybody scrambling and panicking and getting all worked up. And at the same time, everybody's becoming more angry with each other, distrustful of each other, becoming isolated from one each other. And these individuals are laughing at all of it, and they're just waiting for everything to escalate into such a degree where what used to be just verbal insults turns into physical violence, which turns into people killing each other, guns being pulled, warfare, and then all of this, everybody just starts killing each other off, and they're just sitting back laughing the entire time. And while this civil war, world war, and all this is going down, and everybody, brothers and sisters, are killing each other for no fucking reason, they're just adding more fuel. They're just adding more to it to create more confusion amongst even what's there. They're just to add more confusion, more hostility, it's just a nightmare for whoever's in this thing. And they're just laughing, and they just keep adding, and nobody can stop and see what's going on. You guys, everybody stop fighting. You have to, you're going to kill each other. Stop. It's them. That's what you got to see. That's the bottom line message of what, as I've been talking for this period of time, that's the bottom line of this, everything I've said. Everybody has to stop fighting and look at the source of our problems. And then once we address the source of our problems and get that removed, then we can look at all the other problems that we have and get all of that fixed. And then once all these other critical problems are addressed, then we can start taking care of lower priority stuff, and eventually just work our way down until everything's running smoothly again. But until we can get to that stage, until the source is dealt with, seriously, the source has to be dealt with before anything else can happen as far as improving our quality of life. So long as the source is allowed to continue roaming free, doing as it will, doing as they will, the bad guys, they're just free to do as they will. They're the chief commander, the lieutenants, generals, whatever ranks they call themselves, doesn't matter. I'm just talking about the hierarchy, the top leadership of all of them. Until they're removed from their power, everything is going to get worse, because we have already crossed that line where me speaking in front of a camera, talking about them right now, you have to understand they're probably watching, so they're going to be they're either going to be applying a very much higher degree of pressure around the world and around the United States to make things more difficult for everybody. If they are allowed to do that, everything's going to perpetually get worse and worse and worse and worse for everybody. And as I said, the more chaos that they are allowed to create, the more of the good guys' resources that are going to have to be spent putting out all these fires and dealing with these issues. And the longer you allow that, you're going to be depleting yourself of time and manpower and resources as these issues continue creating like a dog chasing its tail. And that's where at some point everybody has to stop fighting these issues and go to the source and deal with the snake. You got to cut the head, metaphorically cut the head off the snake. The one that's leading all of it, and then every single individual that's pledged to him. You got the primary guy, then you got the number 2 and the number 3 as far as their position. You got the right hand and the left hand. And then, everything below it. I think I'm going to stop talking for now, and then the next video I'm going to share, I will be continuing from where I left off on the previous video from this one, where I was talking about Dan. I still have a lot more to share about his background, things that he told me and that I learned about him. So I will be speaking probably for quite a bit of time just about his background on this next video. And then at some point I'll fill you in on his wife's background, like as much as that he told me about his wife. And I'll enlighten you about her, and then after you guys have an idea about these two people, as far as, you can visualize them in your brain in a sense as far as the type of people they are, then I will start enlightening you about all the different types of things Dan told me and conversations we had while I was at his house. And it's going to be a pretty wide range of all kinds of topics, things that you're probably not going to expect, and things that you'll either find really interesting or horrifying, any combination of that. And then I don't know if I'll get it into and then following that, I'm also going to be talking about some of my DMT experiences at his house. So there's a whole lot more to cover, and I figure I just need to stop the video now before we change subjects. And so have a good day, good evening, good night, or good morning, wherever you are. And take care. Okie doke, here we go. It's been about 45 minutes since I cut on the last take. And we're just going to be continuing with where I left off when I was talking about Dan. And, it might sound like I'm repeating myself, but I still have quite a bit more to share about his background alone before I'm ready to talk about his wife, Jamie. And once I'm done talking about her, then I'll start telling you about the stories and things that he shared with me while we were together. Just stuff that's not necessarily about his background as far as his upbringing, and just my intention is just to let you know the type of person he is. So once I do start telling you about my experiences with him, you'll know who I was with and what I was dealing with. You know, about why I made certain choices that I did, even though even though it was dangerous or not, might not appear to have been smart. Some of the choices I made was simply because I really felt like I had no other choice. Like sometimes I just had to make a hard choice, and just to convince Dan that I was falling under his influence and that he could manipulate me how he wanted to. I just had to play along and pretend that I wasn't noticing his mistakes, like when he slipped, like when he slips and says something that he didn't intentionally mean for me to hear. There were multiple times where he slipped and I heard him, and then he either wouldn't repeat himself when I said what, or he would, he just kind of like shrug it off or change the story, tell me that I didn't, try and make me feel like I didn't hear what I just heard, if that makes sense. So just keep all that in mind. Continuing with his background, you know how in the previous episode where I told you all about as much as I could in that time frame about Dan. I told you about his upbringing, how I said that when he was little, like a little guy, that he was abused by either his real dad or his stepfather. I don't remember which. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if he had his real father. I don't really know his father's situation. But I'm pretty sure it was his stepfather that abused him, if I can remember correctly. Either way, once Dan got older and a little bit bigger, he started standing up for himself and fighting back. I guess. I don't know if he fought back. I don't know if he fought back against his father or stepfather, or if what he meant was when he started seeing what he was capable of. If he was just, getting abused by his dad, and then he would just turn around and get in fights with children his age, or younger or older, and then that just progressed to him fighting people bigger than him and older than him, because he wanted to see what he was capable of, right? So I told you all that. But what I didn't tell you at that time, while I was telling that portion of the story, there's another variable to account for that Dan also mentioned. He said there was at some point when he was little, at some point in his life, he, summoned or channeled some type of dark entity, a demon, or something. I don't recall how he described it, but it was some type of like dark entity that was was always around him, and it influenced him in different ways. It was something that people couldn't see, something that was invisible to people, but it was a spirit or an entity of some sort. And he had formed a relationship with that thing, and it fueled his violence. It made Dan stronger than he would be without that thing in his life. Whatever it was something that was giving him different types of abilities and strengths that other people don't have. That's how he described it in a way. And so as he got older, this thing had always been in his life. So whenever he encountered somebody that was, he was about to get in a fight with or about to do some type of violence with, this thing would also attack, influence, do something to the other person. Like the other person would be able to sense this dark energy around Dan that wasn't even part of Dan. It was the thing that Dan had summoned or brought into his life. Enslaved into his life, or had tricked, I don't know, but the two had become attached, and Nobody else knew about it because it was invisible, but Dan knew it was there. He's telling me he told me all this. And so as he got older, as Dan became more violent, so did this dark energy. They were just feeding each other. They were both just becoming more and more violent and destructive. As far as people that rubbed him wrong, it was just that's how he described it anyway. I mean, all of his stories about his childhood and teenage years and being a young adult, nothing but violence. And compared to me, like, I'm not a violent person, like, in the sense, like, I haven't been in any fights. I mean, I can tell you about, there's been a few people that I've punched who have earned getting punched, and I can tell you about that later on. But I haven't actually been in fist fights, any kind of fist fights with another person, because I'm smart enough to know that it's not worth it. Even if you do get in a fight with somebody, it's not worth it. If physical violence through my life, all the people that have rubbed me wrong, or people that have wanted to fight me and I wouldn't fight them, it's just a conscious choice. It has nothing to do with fear. It has to do with the consequences of getting in a fight. Because if I get in a fight, I have a switch that is going to get flipped, and I will severely injure whoever is provoking me to go to that level. I don't fight because I'll either severely injure somebody very quickly, or I'll kill them. That's why my entire life I have refrained from fighting, because anybody that provokes me to that level, they're gonna get it, and I'm aware of it, and I've always done everything I can to just walk away or ignore somebody that's picking away at me. They're taunting me or picking away, insulting me, just trying to trigger me to that level, and I just brush them off, because it's like, I'm brushing you off not because I'm scared of you, but you don't want me to have that flip switch, because you're going to be the one that gets hurt, not me. Because I have things around me too that if that switch gets flipped, the things that other people can't see, they will empower me, just like Dan. But mine are not evil. Mine are guardians. If you believe in God, mine are like guardian angels. On Dan's end, it was what he had summoned was something else, something dark. So you just keep that in mind. Like, I'm completely fine with admitting that. I have guardians around me that protect me from harm. Every time I've had something coming at me where I am in the line of direct harm, where I will be severely injured or I will die, every single time that has happened, something supernatural, some type of phenomenon occurs around me where whatever danger is coming at me, it just goes around, or it abruptly stops, or something steps in the way and just interferes and blocks it. It has happened every single time in my life, for the as far as major injuries or being in a fatal accident, something has stepped in, and I have been able to walk confidently through this darkness, knowing that I have guardians watching my back. By saying that, it's a comparison between Dan and I. Dan had summoned something to make him dark and evil, that gave him abilities to freely walk through this life without anybody being able to take him out, so to speak, or remove him from power. He's been protected by his own guardians, but it's like an evil form. But he had his own thing that was his bodyguard that other people couldn't see. That's how he described it. Okay. So just keep that in mind, because we're gonna come back to this at a later time when I start describing one of Dan's DMT experiences, which is when I encountered this dark thing that had been with him his whole life. There's going to be a story about, he told me about it, and I didn't necessarily know what to believe when he was telling me, but then weeks later, after I left his house, continued down to Sedona, Arizona, and then went up to Utah, and then Colorado, back to Utah, and then back to Nevada. That was like a 2-week span. And then when I came back him and I started doing DMT at his house, and that's when I met this thing that had been in Dan's life for most of his life. I encountered that entity, and we're gonna through the length of this story, even after leaving Las Vegas, this entity is gonna come back into the picture a few different times at later times, and I will talk about it multiple times, and you will become aware of what this entity is and what its past has been and where it's at now. I will tell you all about it because I have met it on multiple occasions, and I've had real conversations with this thing that is as weird as all that sounds right now. And however you personally feel about that, whether you believe me or you don't believe me or anywhere in the middle, just remember I will explain it to you when we get to that part of the story. So I'm just telling you about it so it's in your mind for you to be aware of, and then something for you to be curious about, to look forward to learn more about later on. It's just I keep giving these little breadcrumbs that we're following this bread trail because I'm pulling everything out of my memory. Everything I'm sharing with you as I'm speaking, I'm just pulling all this stuff out of my memories. That's all I can do. I can't write any of this stuff down and then speak about it like I'm reading a script, because that alone will take me so long as compared to just sitting here and allowing my memories to just freely flow out of my mouth in a way that you can understand. That's what I'm getting at. Wait for this guy to pass. A lot of ATVs up here today. Okay, so back to talking about Dan. So that's the first thing that that I mentioned. We're going to be talking about different things. The first thing for this segment, talking about the entity that he brought into his life as a youngster. I don't know how old he was, but it was when he was young, and that thing had been with him all the way up until when I met him in 2018. So just remember, okay, so the next thing, as Dan, I can't give you the exact age, but I would say probably through his teenage years, at least maybe through his late teens, and then once he got into his 20s, Dan talked about having a mentor in his life. Somebody, a friend who he referred to as a mentor, someone who was always around him as he was living his life, going about different things. Remember, he's from Los Angeles, and then I don't remember how old he was, but eventually, after living a violent life in Los Angeles, eventually he moved to Las Vegas, and I don't know how long he had been living there when I crossed paths with him. But probably through his 20s at least, he had a mentor, somebody that was with him all the time and was giving him guidance and knowledge and teaching him about the world, as far as whatever, if they're part of this dark circle and he was conceived into this world, and if he doesn't remember everything, or I don't know how it all works as far as when he was conceived, if he already knew who he was and remembered his past, I don't really know. But it's by having a mentor through his 20s, it was somebody that's educating him to empower him to step into the position that he was born with, to give him as much as knowledge and tools and information as he needs to rule over this realm, if he were to retain it, to maintain it and have it go in the direction that he wants it to go. He's learning stuff. He's always learning stuff. So I believe, as far as a job, I believe he started working for some private contractors. I think that's what he said. And beyond that, he didn't really say what type of private contracting. But he worked for somebody that went on contracting jobs, like government contracting jobs. So there's one story he told me about having a job out at some military base. I think they were building something. He might have had something to do, as a contracting. He might have been working for people that built stuff, but I don't know what they were building. But he told me a story about some job that they had out on some military base, and at some point, I think they ended up deciding to go exploring, driving around, and they took a road that they weren't supposed to, and then they eventually stopped on some cliffside or some elevated area where they could have a pretty good view, and then they saw a whole bunch of different aircraft, like top secret aircraft that didn't look, they looked kind of like alien aircraft, or they're just super advanced technology that the military had developed or something. But he told me about these crazy aircraft that he had seen flying around this military base. And then right after when they saw it, some military truck rolled up on him, and they got in trouble for seeing something that they weren't supposed to see. And then the only reason they got let go is because of who Dan is, but whatever military personnel that had rolled up on them, they had to make the message clear to Dan that he's not supposed to talk about it, and whatever he saw, it's like, you didn't see it, you didn't see what you just saw. You cannot talk about this stuff. And so, that's something that Dan told me about. He saw some crazy aircraft and then he was telling me about it, even though he was told he wasn't supposed to talk about it. So you can only imagine, if he told me that story, imagine a number of other people he's told that story to. So that was a thing, So when he's telling me that he had worked on some military base doing some type of contracting job, it was just making me wonder, well, who were you working with, and what type of connections did you have then, right? And so further elaborating on jobs that he had taken out at a military base, he told me about the type of security cameras and motion sensors and just all types of security that these military bases have around the perimeter and even greater perimeter of their base, where he gave me a bunch of examples, saying say you're walking through, say you're approaching a military base from miles and miles away and you can't even see it yet, and all you can see are rocks that look like boulders or cactuses or sagebrush, and that's all you can see is just this desert vegetation and just this vast landscape and nothing else. Dan was telling me about how the military, not just the military, but this would include probably law enforcement and the NSA and FBI, CIA, everybody who has access to this type of technology and gadgets and stuff, but that they have cameras and motion sensors and microphones throughout this landscape that look like vegetation, that look like a rock, or it looks like a bush, or it looks like a tree from a long ways away, and even if you get close to it, you can't tell the difference. And so if you're say you're a bad guy trying to sneak up on a military base, and you have bad intentions to do something to timer. But anyway, say you're a bad guy and you have bad intentions on sneaking up on a military base, as an example, and you have to approach it from a long ways away across a big open landscape, or even mountains, or even through a forest. Doesn't really matter. But you can't see anything that looks like any type of surveillance. You don't see any cameras. You don't see anything that might symbolize that you would be detected as you're approaching your target. But the truth of the matter is, every step of the way you're being tracked, because not only are there cameras that are disguised as foliage or a boulder or a rock that has a tiny little peephole that has a thermal camera on it that can see you in the dark from fucking like a half mile away or further. And then they have a bunch of different cameras, and they're all synced together within some type of communications room that they can see all the different screens, and wherever you're at, they know exactly your position. And you got microphones and things attached to this or spread out, so they can tune in to any conversations that you're making with whoever is with you, or if you're plugged in on some other comm unit, they can hear everything you're saying as you're getting there. And that's the type of technology Dan was describing. And so, using what he told me, knowing about these types of things exist. Okay, so who's to say, just think big scale. All of all these secret cameras and microphones and all that stuff. How vast are they across? I'm just going to pick something out of the hat. Say the United States. How much has already been installed into like a giant grid, where pretty much whoever is in that control room that has access to anything that they want as far as this grid of remote cameras. What I'm saying is, how do we know, like, say if you're a bad guy, wherever you're at, if you think you're hidden somewhere deep in the woods, or I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Wherever you think you're hidden, how do you know that you actually are? Motorcycle, ATVs, motorcycle that way, ATVs at the same time. Right on cue. But I'm saying, as I'm bringing all this up, how do I not know, if I have friends or bad guys that know where I like to come record? They know what they're starting to pick up on my routine, especially if I'm communicating within my van, letting them know where I have chosen to do my recordings and where I like to do them. So I'm letting them know ahead of time. They know the times I'll be here. How do I not know if they've just, they've driven up here at some point in time, and they got cameras and microphones all over this place, and not just around my camp area where they can hear me, but having cameras and microphones, thermal cameras, and all kinds of shit all over this mountainside for miles. So what I'm saying is, I can sit here and do all my recordings, and anybody that has bad intentions, no matter how far they travel, and they don't see any sign of human life, as far as anybody detecting their presence, and they think they can make it all the way to my position through the woods without getting caught. But the catch is, every step of the way, they've been passing by hidden microphones and cameras that have been tracking them. So anybody that has bad intentions, once they cross a certain proximity, I have friends that are just waiting, and all they got to do is, okay, open fire. However many of my friends are in attendance, every single one of them gets the command, open fire. Bam, 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 bam. All of them dead. The bad guys won't even see it coming until it's too late. So, I just further elaborated on this thing that Dan told me, as far as my current situation, knowing about this type of technology and stuff, which allows me to kind of rest easy, because I just know that my friends have access to some pretty cool technology and gadgets, and they have the manpower and resources to have people to go out and install that stuff. So once everything's installed and it all goes live and active, they just have like this, wherever their command station is, they just have like this holographic screen that shows the dimension, not only the dimensions of the terrain, the layout, but they can see where all of their devices are, and then anybody that's moving, not both friendlies, neutral people, and bad guys, anybody within this grid, they just shine like a beacon from this command unit, like having a radar. If you think about how radar tracks aircraft in the sky, well, it's the same type of concept. You have a giant grid that's tracking everything on the ground through electric pulses or just cameras in general. once an individual gets pinged, they just get tracked on this holographic screen, and then command whoever is doing the communications, they can relay this information to the boots. I don't know if that over the ATV was too loud, maybe. But how do you not know if there's a command that's relaying all this information to boots on the ground, so they're able to intercept any bad guys when they want to? They get to choose their battlefield and choose where they want to ambush the bad guys. They just get to decide, and they can fuck with them every step of the way. And then as the bad guys get closer, they keep experiencing these weird phenomenons, and then they start getting more and more paranoid as they're getting closer, and then they start getting afraid as they getting close. Like, oh shit, I feel like we're close to Brandon, but it feels like we're surrounded. And there's a moment they realize, like, oh shit, this might be a trap. All of a sudden my friends appear. Bam, 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 all headshots. Everybody just drops. That might explain why sometimes I hear gunshots in the distance. How do I not know? Or maybe I'm just a crazy guy just ranting about stuff like this. That's up for you to figure out. But if it's all true, it doesn't surprise me. And I haven't had anybody tell me any of this. This is just stuff that I've, thinking about different scenarios and how different strategies from the bad guys. If the bad guys are trying to think of different strategies and tactics on how they can get to me, that would make sense if they had people trying to cross vast distances through the wilderness, as opposed to trying to drive directly up the road to my position. They might literally be too afraid to drive up the road, but they might take a gamble on dropping off a bunch of foot soldiers who have some type of military or combat experience or something. They're just bad people. They're bad people that have signed up for the dark side, and they've agreed to come try to get me, and they're willing to hike, backpack with their whatever gear they're bringing, their weapons and stuff. They're willing to travel 20, 30, 40 miles through the wilderness to eventually make it to me and do the job. It would make sense if the entire mountainside behind me is loaded with cameras and microphones, because the military is active out there. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just ahead of myself. But again, if you're a bad guy, if you're one of the bad guys and you just heard everything I said, just know that's for you to figure out, and I'm just asking you to try your luck. Because as you're watching my video, you can hear all these ATVs passing by me, non-stop ATVs. Some of them might be just recreational people, but how do you know some of them aren't just military, loaded up with the things that they need to go get their assignments done? And then they come back down, and then they go back up, and then they go back down. And then at the same time they're patrolling. Anytime they get a call saying that we got a bad guy over here, they go over there and take care of them. How do you know? How do you know? I mean, that's how I feel. And then explaining all the gunshots I've heard over the last month since I've spent time up here recording, or just working on things while up on this specific area. Why there have been different days where there's been gunshots, including in the middle of the night. That night was crazy. Like 12 a.m., just right down the road, man. Like right down the road. Like I promise, like probably less than a quarter mile. It sounded like it was just on the other side of the ridge that some people got lit the fuck up. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. It was like 60 to 80 rounds. Like either somebody, like automatic rifles, so just bam, 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 all the way up to 60 to 80 rounds, just roaring through the middle of the night. And then like 10 minutes later, another 20 to 40 rounds. And the second time when they shot somebody, I think the first time I'm pretty sure they were using semi-auto fire rather than full auto, which is why the rounds sounded so. I mean, they were being shot fast, but they were spaced apart. But the second time that I heard the gunshots, it sounded like somebody had maybe flipped the switch to full auto mode, because then it was like, I was like, holy shit. But yeah. So all that, that's all more background information, things to chew on. And my awareness of these things being a possibility is a product of Dan telling me about jobs that he had worked on when he was younger out at military bases and discovering different types of technology that were out there while he was working out there. But yeah, so that's another thing to know about. Third, Dan told me about, I don't know how old he was. He's probably in his 30s. Maybe, I don't know. I really can't even say how old he was. But Dan traveled to Saudi Arabia. He flew to Saudi Arabia at some point in his life. He was probably in his 30s, either 30s or 40s. Doesn't really matter to me. I'm just going off the story he told me. But he traveled to Saudi Arabia, and he had a visa that was hand-signed by, was it the king or the prince of Saudi Arabia? I forget what I don't think they call it. They're not presidents, right? They don't call the head guy of Saudi Arabia. They call him a king or a prince or something. Not sure. But he had a visa that was personally hand-signed by whoever Saudi Arabia's king or prince is, as like kind of like a personal invitation. And then, so yeah, he went to Saudi Arabia, and who knows what type of business he conducted while he was there. He didn't tell me what he did while he was there. He just told me about traveling there, and he told me a story about some security guard that tried fucking with him, like right after he landed, when they were getting all their luggage and things unpacked, or either taken off the plane or at a hotel or something they were staying at. There's some some security guy that tried fucking with him and tried telling him that they had like lost his visa or his passport or something, and the guy whoever the security guy wasn't giving it to Dan, and Dan could just sense that the guy was literally holding it in his hand and was hiding it from Dan. And then Dan called that guy out, and it became like a big issue in the public. So it created unwanted attention. And then some other officers or other security came and intervened, and Dan explained it to them that the guy that he was yelling at was hiding his visa or his passport or something. And then those security guys dealt with that guy. They removed him, and Dan never saw him again. So you don't know what happened to him. He could have got fired. They could have just murdered him. Who knows? But he got taken away, and then Dan got his passport and visa, whatever it was, and then he went on with about his business for why he was there. But I don't remember him telling me why he was in Saudi Arabia. He just mentioned the visa being hand signed by the prince or something, and then the story about the guy trying to keep it from him, after they had landed. What does that mean? I don't know. I mean, it just tells me he has connections with people down there, and whether it has to do with business or political things, no idea. I'm gonna take a drink. But the next thing to talk about, so number 4. Now that I've mentioned that he had this trip to Saudi Arabia, I'm gonna backtrack. If you can remember, a few segments ago, I think it was the segment 12 or 11 or 12 or something. It's titled house sitting. And at some point in that segment, I mentioned the Las Vegas shooting. You remember it was either like November or December of 2017 when all those people got shot by that supposed gunman in the hotel window that shot everybody in the crowd. That's the supposed story, right? And I explained all that in that segment, so you should be aware of all of that. So I'm bringing that back up because when Dan told me about the Saudi Arabia thing, traveling to Saudi Arabia, that's that's a puzzle piece for you to account for. So I think it was that first night that I stayed the night at Dan's place after doing DMT. I asked him about the Las Vegas shooting, because Dan lives in Las Vegas, or he lives in the suburb of Las Vegas. He lives, I don't know, a 15-minute drive from downtown Las Vegas. We get on the freeway and then take the exit, and you can be downtown Las Vegas. Probably about 15 minutes from where he lived. But because he was so close, and because it's March 2018, and then that event had just happened like 4 months prior, 5 months prior, so it's still relatively fresh on everybody's minds. So now that I was actually there in Nevada, in the Las Vegas area, and I was in Dan's company, I asked him, I was like, for his thoughts on it. I was like, Dan, where were you during the Las Vegas shooting? Like, did you hear anything while it was happening, or what's your give me your perspective, or what position you were in. There's a bug crawling on my leg. He told me that he was home. He was at his house when that happened. I can't remember if he said he was sleeping. He was supposedly sleeping, just so he could pretend not to be have any knowledge of it. But that's what he told me. He was at his house. Okay. Beyond that, he didn't really say about, as far as what he was doing while that went on. But he did talk about what happened, what actually happened, not the mainstream media's narrative. And he told me that that the shooting itself, all the people that got shot, he said that whole thing was a diversion, and that there was an assassination attempt on if I remember correctly, he said it was like a Saudi Arabian prince that was at one of the casinos during the shooting. He said the shooting itself, as far as all the people that got shot in the crowd, that in itself was just a diversion for a bigger move that was happening in one of the casinos with an assassination attempt on one of the Saudi princes. I don't believe he told me who it was, and I wouldn't remember even if he did. And I don't remember if he mentioned anything about the outcome. He never mentioned anything about the outcome, as if that Saudi prince had been assassinated or if he escaped, so I don't know. So I have no idea about the fate of that individual's life. But he said, that something happened as far as the assassination attempt, but he said as far as the shooting and the crowd, he told me about there was a whole bunch of black helicopters that were dropping off shooters onto the rooftops of the casinos and hotels that were around that area. And then there were shooters on the ground, and that there was a few shooters on I think that would be I think it was the southeast corner of that area. There's some like concrete towers or something on some private property. I think he said that there were shooters up on those towers. But yeah, it was like not only was it a diversion, but it was like some type of sacrifice, some type of dark sacrifice. Yeah, so it was some type of like satanic ritual sacrifice, like with killing all those people that were down there. So a whole bunch of fucked up stuff happened during that period. Man, that guy's hauling butt. And then, and then the media lied about the whole story. And then those lies got blown into different proportions, and new laws and policies were created as a product of all that. Oh, there's another bug. A whole bunch of beetles growing on me. Weird. So that was another thing, another thing to chew on. Some more background information about Dan. 5, so I think this is 5 now. You know how I mentioned how he had like a mentor, had some kind of mentor. Man, there's so many ATVs. Like he had a mentor. Um, so Dan told me another story about how he was being taught how to secretly infiltrate businesses and different organizations, um, and how to sneak into places without ever getting caught and then extracting like valuable information. A moment. And one of the examples that he gave me was the mentor that he had given him an assignment to go into some hospital. Man, so many. Had been given an assignment to go into some hospital and masquerade as one of the staff, a staff member of the hospital. And he had a job of like finding some kind of information within the hospital. And so at some point, Dan, carried out this task, and I think he said he spent hours inside this hospital pretending to be like, I don't even know, somebody that worked there. And he ended up making his way into some office and getting his hands on a bunch of stuff. And nobody knew otherwise. And the lesson that Dan was telling me was that there are so many people at their jobs who are just going about their tasks that people don't really notice each other, and people don't know what other people are doing. And when someone is up to something of no good, of no intent, and everybody around has no reason to have their eye out or to be questioning anybody, or they're too afraid to ask what somebody's up to because they just assume that they work there, but they've just never seen him before. But so therefore he's probably somebody that's important who's just doing something else that's important, so let's not bother him. So Dan's lesson was about how doesn't really matter. A business, a government institution, some private corporation, doesn't matter how they are able to plant moles and rats that are in disguise within these places, and they go and find the things that they need, information that they need, locating people that they're looking for, getting access to secret or private information or top secret information. You know what I'm getting at. They're trying to get access to things that they could never have access to if they don't sneak in. And that was whatever Dan was being taught by his mentor. It was about infiltration, essentially, how to infiltrate places without getting caught. And the hospital was just an example of how he was just, all he had to do is pretend, just put on the same type of uniform, go inside, act natural, be friendly with people, and then pretend. And just, if people ask what he's up to, he just gives them some fake name, some fake narrative about what he's doing, and then people just leave him alone. And how he's able to get access to things right under people's noses. And there was somebody teaching him how to do it. And then you can imagine once he learned everything he needed to learn from that person, and then he went off on his own, you can imagine how all of that has just evolved to bigger and worse things. And that's essentially how law enforcement has been infiltrated, military got infiltrated, religions have been infiltrated, and pretty much all government institutions have been infiltrated. It's the same strategy that they're doing. And then once they have somebody inside any of these organizations that's just like a mole or a rat, that's just secret. It's secret. No innocent person and nobody on the good side has any knowledge that there's a mole or a rat. So that rat or mole is just sitting there observing and learning as much as they can. And when nobody's looking, they will go steal things or go snoop on information when they have an opportunity. And then after they have what they're assigned, whatever they're assigned to obtain, when they get an opportunity, they have somebody that they communicate to. And then once that person has that information, that's when the circle, the bad guys, the lion's den, so to speak, that's when they start coming up with their next plan of how they want to proceed forward. That's Dan's reality. That's his life. And that is an example of why so many places around the country, so many institutions, organizations, departments, corporations, government branches have all been infiltrated. And that's how they have done it. It's because, and a big reason is because people don't know, good people and innocent people and neutral people who don't know about the bad guys, they're hiding, the bad guys are hiding in plain sight. And not only are they hiding in plain sight, the general public has not been educated about their existence. Okay. And so people don't even know what they're looking for. They don't even know what to look for. Even if they're told about it, they don't know what to look for. They don't know what signs and clues. And so, as this has been happening, people haven't been looking, and so everything's been happening right under everybody's noses because nobody's paying attention, or has not been paying attention. But I feel like now people are really paying attention because the bad guys, their game they've been exposed. I mean, they have been for a while, but right now is just like a really interesting time where the bad guys have to figure out what to do, or they're at the end of the line. Like, what are they going to do next, right? So yeah, I feel like my voice is starting to crack a little bit. My throat's starting to be strained. I'm probably going to be done speaking for today, and I'll just continue like tomorrow morning or something, and continue where I left off. So all that I just shared with you, all that's pretty significant information to know. Backstory, that's all stuff that's worth knowing about, right? Some of the things I said might have appeared like I deviated a little bit, kind of got off track. Not necessarily. The information I provided, from my perspective, seems like it could be useful or valuable for you guys to know about. And then if you're a bad guy and you heard all of this, then you're probably even more paranoid than you were before you started this video. So there you go. You're welcome. I think it's funny. I think the bad guys are scared out of their minds right now. They don't know what the fuck to do. And then they're looking at Dan and their leader, Dan and my dad and the other person, who I will eventually name. Not on the camera anyways. I'll name that other person at some point. But those three, and then everybody directly connected to them, and then a little bit further out in this web, all of them are just sweating their asses off. They're terrified because if everything I'm saying is true, it means they're almost at the end of the line, which is right about the time when they start paying the price for everything they've done. It's when all the consequences and karma catch up to them. We reap what we sow. So all the bad people who have sown some very bad shit through their lifetimes, they're about to reap it. You're about to get back exactly what you've given, but it's going to be like 100 times worse. So yeah, if you're a good guy, you're a good person, and you're here to learn all that, there's a lot to look forward to. So you can look forward to the next video that gets posted tomorrow. And then if you're a bad guy, you can just sit in fear for the next 24 hours, trembling. What's Brandon going to talk about next? Oh my God. And then you're getting all mad at Dan and them because they're not able to get to me. And so you're all stressing about the consequences, like, because you guys don't want to go to prison or any of that stuff. So I understand. It's okay. You can you guys can all give each other big hugs once you're all in the pen together. You guys can all counsel each other and baby each other. Or you guys can just all start killing each other once you start blaming each other for all the different mistakes you've made. But you're just stuck there, so too bad for you. But the good guys will just be, everybody on the good side will just be watching you from the outside, be like, you guys all had your opportunity to say no to Dan, but you guys all sold out and proceeded forward with being shitheads and bad people and doing terrible things. So, You guys get what you deserve, so too bad. But anyways, have a good day, good evening, good morning, good night. Like the Truman Show, you know, Jim Carrey. Anyways, take care.